Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all the suffering and joyous beings everywhere. So good morning, everyone. We're studying Swami Prabhavananda's collection of talks published as Realizing God. We're finishing up his talk on the Buddha, reviewing the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path, of course, follows the Buddha's description of the Four Noble Truths about suffering. And the first of the Eightfold Path to leave the realm of suffering is right view or right understanding. The second is right aspiration. Third, right speech. Fourth, right conduct. Fifth, right livelihood. And we'll start this morning's reading with right effort, right effort. Sixth is right effort, not to allow distracting thoughts while you sit to pray or meditate, instead to control them. Buddha gives one method, which is also in Patanjali's yoga. In the beginning, watch your mind run after distracting thoughts. So you simply sit, and as you close your eyes and withdraw yourself from the sense world around you, you just watch your mind. You see what happens as you remove your mind from as much stimulation as you can. Where does it go? What does it do? Watch your mind run after distracting thoughts. So this is the first part of right effort. And as Swami points out, it's mentioned by the Buddha, it's also mentioned by Patanjali. Keep watch, be the witness, and then gather the forces of the mind and concentrate. So after you've watched your mind for a while, you say, well, enough of this. And then you gather your mind, that is to say, whatever the focus of your contemplation, concentration, and meditation is, you place your attention there and do your best to hold it there as distracting thoughts and emotions and so on attempt to interrupt. So keep watch, be the witness, and then gather the forces of the mind and concentrate. Seventh is right mindfulness. This means seeing the ephemeral nature of everything through discrimination and then concentrating upon the truth that is eternal, focusing on one of the spiritual centers of the body, just as in yoga practice. Now, this is a variant on the way of meditation of the Jnani. First, we think about the truth that we've heard. Then we concentrate on that. We do our manana. We say, okay, this is the truth. And we're separating that through discrimination from the lower forms of truth that we practice in our everyday lives. And then after we've separated it out, we focus that truth at one of the spiritual centers of the body, the heart center, the throat center, not usually the throat center, the forehead center, or the top center. So we usually it's at the heart or here. So focusing on one of the spiritual centers of the body, just as in yoga practice. And eighth is right contemplation. It is what is called dhyana. It is what we call Gianna Meditation. The Buddhists call it contemplation. Vedantists or yogis call it dhyana meditation. It means concentration of the mind so that there is a continuous flow of consciousness without any break. Now, we can use Patanjali's formula here and think that we have achieved concentration when we can hold the same thought or image or mantra for 12 seconds without interruption. This is the beginning of concentration. If we can do that for 12 times 12 seconds, 144, or 2 minutes, 24 seconds, this is then the beginning of meditation. And it is not an easy thing to learn to do, but it can be done. And so you during the years that you're learning, you move in and out of it, move in and out of it, move in and out of it. And then one day you find, oh my, and you realize this afterwards, you don't realize it when it happens. Oh my, I have been continuously in this one frame of reference, this one image, this one thought, this one mantra for some time. I have been meditating. So this is right mindfulness, right contemplation, right contemplation, dhyana. A continuous flow of consciousness without any break. An illustration is electric light. The current comes continuously and you see a steady light. But if there is a break in the current, the light will flicker. We all have experienced this. There's been some interruption in the power supply, thunderstorm, whatever, the light flickers. And we all, anyone who tries to practice contemplation, concentration, meditation will know that what is very well what is meant by this flickering. The very nature of the mind is to run from one thing to another, changing all the time. Notice that Swami says the very nature of the mind. Why? Because it is made of the gunas. The mind is a construct of the gunas acting on our old mental impressions, our old and new mental impressions. So the gunas are constantly changing. They're running across, you can think of the gunas as like various kinds of winds running across a field, a great huge field of wind chimes. Some wind chimes have a low, kind of disappointing tone, some have a high, pleasing tone. This is what it is talking about. The nature of the mind is to change all the time, running from one thing to another, simply because that's what's being stimulated in your awareness. not your consciousness. Your consciousness is continuous, unbroken, but you're not aware of it. That's when we match our awareness and our consciousness, that's when we're achieving meditation. When our awareness becomes one with our consciousness. Our awareness, what we're aware of, is normally constantly changing because of the effects of the gunas, which are constantly changing on our mind stuff. But let the current of the mind flow toward only one thought continuously, like oil poured from one vessel to another, then there is continuity. Similarly, when there is steadiness, like a flame sheltered from wind, then the noble kind of knowledge arises. Now, notice the Swami says the knowledge arises. It was, like I said, the consciousness is ever there behind this screen of distraction is this knowledge, is this consciousness. You know, the term is Satchidananda, which means existence, knowledge, bliss. All of that is simply behind the distraction. So when there is steadiness, like a flame sheltered from wind, then the noble kind of knowledge arises. It doesn't arrive from somewhere else, it arises from within. Then you are free from suffering and you attain peace. When there is steadiness, like a flame sheltered from wind, then the noble kind of knowledge, and I'll just add the word spontaneously, arises. Then you are free from suffering and you attain peace. There are two ideals. One is striving and the other is depending on divine grace. Throughout the teachings of Buddha, we find that he lays great stress on the idea of striving, of having to struggle. Buddha insists on taking refuge within oneself, not in any being outside, because Brahman is within yourself. So when the Buddha doesn't talk about gods and goddesses and all of that, no, he says you take refuge in that which is within. I called it a moment ago Satchidananda, which is just another name for Brahman. Buddha insists on taking refuge within oneself, not in any being outside, because Brahman is within yourself. Swami Vivekananda pointed out emphatically that our prayers are answered, but who answers the prayers? Swami Vivekananda points out, and this is in the introduction to his book Raja Yoga, he points out emphatically that our prayers are answered, but who answers the prayers? You yourself. He meant God, the divine being. All power is within. The Atman, that divine presence which seems to be separate, isn't, but seems to be separate within you, is called the Atman. The Atman, which is one with Brahman, answers the prayers from within. So take your refuge in that self within. Nirvana is misunderstood as extinction of life. It is the extinction of suffering and misery and the attainment of the absolute, eternal life, absolute knowledge and bliss, Satchidananda, the same as Vedanta or Christianity or Sufism or Judaism. So the Swami is saying the goal is the same in all of those. Eternal life, absolute knowledge, and bliss, the same as Vedanta or Christianity or Sufism or Judaism. Christians often say that Buddhism is pessimistic and that Christianity is life-affirming. But what did Jesus teach? He who loves this life shall lose it. What does he mean? He means that you'll go to death and not eternal life, not immortality. If you cling to life, if you make a practice of clinging to life, then you will lose life. From the Vedantic point of view, of course, and the Buddhists too, you will be reborn and have another opportunity to find your way home. Buddha would say, find it here and now, not after death. Yes, indeed. We Hindus worship Buddha as an avatar or divine incarnation. Though we are not Buddhists, I'll relate to you a vision, a spiritual experience of Swami Vijnananda. Now, Swami Vijnananda was the last monastic disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. He was the last of the monastic disciples to join. He was Swami Swahananda's guru. And if you read about Vijnananda, oh, what an amazing human being, what an amazing saint. I'll relate to you a vision, a spiritual experience of Swami Vijnananda. I heard this is Swami Prabhavananda speaking. I heard this directly from him and wrote it in my diary. He said, I went to visit Sarnath near Benares, where Buddha preached his first sermon after illumination. Suddenly, I lost all physical consciousness. My mind seemed all, now this is the Swami speaking now, the Swami Prabhavananda wrote it in his diary. I went to visit Sarnath near Benares, where Buddha preached his first sermon after illumination. Suddenly, I lost all physical consciousness. My mind seemed almost to have vanished. I was enveloped in an ocean of light, the light that is vibrant with peace, joy, and knowledge, Satchidananda, the light that is vibrant with peace, joy, and knowledge. I felt, as it were, I was living in Buddha. I felt, as it were, I was living in Buddha. What does Buddha mean? Buddha means the awakened one. And awakened to that light vibrant with peace, joy, and knowledge. I do not remember how long I remained in that state. The guide thought I had fallen asleep. As it was getting late, he tried to awaken me, and so brought me back to normal consciousness. Later, when I went to the temple of Vishwanath in Benares, excuse me, later, when I went to the temple of Vishwanath in Benares, Vishwanath means the Lord of the universe. It is the stone image of Lord Shiva. I thought to myself, why have I come here? To look at a stone? Now notice, this is a man of Ramakrishna's lineage, and he is still in this frame of mind of, what am I doing? What is each of my actions doing? He isn't just automatically reverent. He isn't just automatically, oh, this is a place to be reverent, so I'll be reverent. No, he says, why have I come here? To look at a stone? When this same vision opened up, it was as if Vishwanath were telling me, the light is the same here as there. Truth is one. So what's the lesson, the little lesson in this? We must be sincere. We must not be hypocritical or pious. He said, what am I doing here? I've come to Vishwanath, I've come to this temple. Why have I come? Just to look at a stone? when, because of his sincerity, because of his complete vulnerability to the truth, he was given that vision. It was as if Vishwanath were telling me, the light is the same here as there. Truth is one. Now, just from here, let me say, I think we can believe every word of Vijnanananda's is as true as speech can make anything. These two things actually happened to him, just as he narrates them, as close as speech can come to telling a story. And the Swami now, he doesn't say so, he doesn't make a transition here, but he's reflecting on Swami Vijnanananda asking, what am I doing here? Did I come to look at a stone? What is meant by discrimination? To realize, at least intellectually, the ephemeral nature of everything, how everything passes. So this is why the Swami was asking that question. This stone is just a stone. It'll disintegrate in time. What am I doing here? This is discrimination. That was what Buddha emphasized. You can hold nothing. To give the simile Buddha used, it is like bidding the clouds to stay. It is like bidding the clouds to stay. We all have observed clouds in the sky. They're constantly shifting and changing and so on. They appear and disappear. Discrimination, Buddha emphasized, you can hold on to nothing. This is discrimination. To give the simile Buddha used, it is like bidding the clouds to stay. You have happiness today, and you think it is going to last forever, but it is like bidding the clouds to stay. Happiness is not to be found in that which is passing, that which arises and passes away, as the Buddhists say. Happiness is not to be found in that which is passing. Happiness and suffering follow each other. Neither is permanent. Suffering comes and we get upset. But know that it is also a passing phase. It won't stay. Doesn't mean you don't get upset. But then you think, oh, well, this too shall pass. Buddha strongly accepted a fundamental theory of the Hindus, what is known as karma and reincarnation. He pointed out, like the Hindus, that the ideal is to rise above karma and rebirth. As long as we are within that wheel, we suffer. What does it mean to be within that wheel? Well, think of it as a hamster wheel. No matter how hard you run, turning that hamster wheel, you get nowhere. The ideal is to rise above karma and rebirth. As long as we are within that wheel, we suffer. We have to come out of that wheel of karma and rebirth by attaining the noble kind of wisdom, as he calls it. And that starts with that right understanding of the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering, there is a way out, and so on. What Buddha taught was really the Upanishads. We see the teachings of the Upanishads echoed through and through. We find in the Upanishads the noble kind of wisdom the Buddha taught. That which words cannot express, and from which the mind comes away baffled. What does it mean, comes away baffled? When we experience the truth that is behind the distraction, it's very difficult to put it into words. It's very difficult to express what we've experienced. Because what we've experienced, we've touched that which is infinite, eternal, unchanging. All of our experience, which is defined by the word experience itself, all of our experience is finite, time-bound, constantly changing. So our language and our way of thinking reflects that. So when we touch on the truth, the mind, which is trained in words and concepts, the mind comes away baffled. That is the wisdom to be sought. Transcendental experience, nirvana. And that is the samadhi of the yogis, and that is the turiya, the fourth, in the Upanishads. These are equivalent terms, the Swami is saying. Nirvana, samadhi, turiya. Turiya, the fourth state of consciousness. There's waking, dreaming, and dreamless waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep, or consciousness, subconsciousness, and unconsciousness. The fourth is transcendental or superconsciousness. Those three terms are equivalent. So if you read the one, you're reading all three. By Jesus, it is called being born in spirit. And he talks about nirvana as the peace that passeth all understanding. Buddha pointed out that there is this difference between ignorance and the noble kind. Buddha pointed out that there is this difference between ignorance and the noble kind of wisdom, the difference between sleep and awakening. You are asleep and dreaming. All kinds of dreams come to you. While you're asleep, there is no understanding, no knowledge. And when that sleep breaks and you wake up, you see things differently. But this waking state is also sleep. Now, this is what is so very difficult for us to accept, that we are in a kind of hypnotized sleep. The hypnosis, the instrument of hypnosis is within Vedanta called Maya, duality. In fact, it has no permanent reality. It is just something occurring in your presence. Your presence is that witness, the Atman, Brahman, consciousness itself. So we are constantly in this state, or almost constantly in this state of a kind of trance or sleep or dream called Maya. Does that mean there's something wrong? No, there's nothing wrong. It's not wrong at all. It's just there's something more if you want it, if you yearn for it, if you ask for it, as Jesus said, then you will receive it. You will receive the awakening, and then having waked up, you may go back to sleep. You may re-enter Maya. What choice do you have as long as you're embodied? As Sri Ramakrishna said, you cannot hold your voice constantly on the highest note. So you re-enter the dream. but you re-enter it with a whole different perspective. Oh, I see. I am dreaming this.
May I ask for clarity? Is it okay?
Yes, please, Justine, go right ahead.
What I'm kind of unsure about, not really understanding, is where's the line between this experience and enlightenment? I mean, where does one end and the other begin?
There is no line. This is a very good question, Justine. One time, Swami Brahmananda, who was an attendant of, one time Swami Prabhavananda, he was not yet Swami. He was still Abani. One time Abani was an attendant of Swami Brahmananda, the president of the Ramakrishna order, was sitting outside Brahmananda's room having a discussion with another brahmachari, a young monk. And Abani said, well, you cannot see the transcendental reality with your physical eyes. And the thing about Prabhavananda, even when he was young, he was very adamant about things. And so he was making, he was saying this and making a case. But the window was open and Brahmananda heard him. So Brahmananda came out. And Brahmananda said, oh, he said this in English, oh, so I see you have become omniscient. Show me the line of demarcation where the world of matter ends and the world of spirit begins. There is no line of demarcation. The experience you have as you awaken is unquestionable. But where the line is for each individual will be different. But having crossed the line and having had the experience of being free from the delusion for even an instant, and I mean that, for even an instant, then it calls into question everything else. And so you may slip back into the duality, but you now have this other. And so you will return to that. It's very hard to master the mind. It's very hard to master the emotions. They pull us this way and that constantly. This is why there are all these books written about this and all of these practices, all of these various workbooks. But there is no line of demarcation. But you know it when you've crossed it. Is that sufficient answer, Justine, or is there more?
Oh, there's always more, but yes, that's fine.
Okay, very good, thank you. And while we're stopped, this is good. Any other comments or questions? Because we're talking about where the rubber really meets the road here now. Okay. But the waking state is also a sleep, a kind of sleep, he means. But the waking state is also a kind of sleep. We have to be awakened. It is not vision or lights or things like that. It is beyond all that. It is the pure experience of being. And that's what I meant when I said, when you have had that experience of just being, then you understand the inflected and fragmented quality of our everyday waking experience. It is not vision or lights or things like that. You may have that, but those are still experiences. Those are still something that happens within duality. An experiencer, experienced, and there's the experiencer, the experiencing, and the experienced. This is the duality. It's absolutely indescribable what it's like to be in the pure experience of being, because there is no mind there. The mind is a dualistic instrument, so there's no mind there. You can't say this happened, because there's nothing happens. It's inexpressible. It is not vision or lights or things like that. It is beyond all that. It is the pure experience of being. Ramakrishna said about Buddha's silence, when one attains samadhi, then alone comes the knowledge of Brahman. What Buddha's silence, he meant about the gods and goddesses and all that. When one attains samadhi, then alone comes the knowledge of Brahman. In that realization, all thoughts cease. One becomes perfectly silent. There is no power of speech left by which to express Brahman. At the outset, I must tell you, I'm not a Buddhist, and yet all Hindus worship Buddha as one of the divine incarnations. It is similar to the relation between Christ and Christianity. Christ was born a Jew, and Christianity at one time was a small sect of Judaism. Eventually, a new religion was formed. Buddha was born a Hindu, and Hindus accepted his teachings. But the followers of Buddha took him and his teaching in new directions, and so you find Buddhism developed later without the background of Vedanta. This is Mahayana Buddhism, the big boat. They made Buddha into a god, and if we trace the other root, the other branch of Buddhism, which is called Hinayana, the small boat, we find that it goes from India, where it is a form of knowledge. Knowledge is called Gianna. In China, it became Chan Buddhism, knowledge Buddhism. And then that traveled to Japan and became Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism. It's shocking to us to hear a Zen Buddhist say, if you hear the word Buddha, spit. If you see the Buddha, kill him. They actually say these things because they do not want personality. They do not want cult personality, the cult of personality. So they go. It's all about the profound and transcendental knowledge of realization.
And when you say cult of personality, what do you mean?
When we take a divine being and make them the center of our practice. Now, we're not talking rights and wrongs here. I'm not praising the Zen Buddhists and dissing anyone else. I'm simply saying that this is the way they see it. They do not want to make a cult of personality, as the Mahayana Buddhists did, of the Buddha. So a cult of personality, Christianity is a cult of personality. Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, Vedanta, and Holy Mother, Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Vivekananda, is a cult of personality. We worship and revere and look to these personalities. The thing that is to be understood is that they're not outside us, they are inside us. This is what Swami Prabhavananda meant when he said the chosen ideal, that ideal, which is at the center of what I called a cult of personality, the chosen ideal is you yourself, no different. Learn to feel that living presence. And so I was simply saying that when these Mahayana Buddhists moved away from Vedanta, the extreme Advaitists within Vedanta, those who practice what they call the true Vedanta, they also have no personalities. There's no personalities having, they may have a teacher. But as is said in one of the Upanishads, Janaka said to this student who came, "Give me my fee first." Why? Well, because as soon as you understand, you won't recognize me as a teacher anymore. You won't see any difference between yourself and myself. So he was being humorous, of course. Does that answer your question, Brahmadas?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? That was good.
Brother Shankara,
Yes.
I just have one comment on what you just said. I agree that Christianity has become a cult of personality, although and I'm not the biggest Jesus follower, so I don't, correct me if it's wrong. So I think Jesus said, what I have done, you will do better. So to me, that suggests that he did not want that cult of personality. He wanted us, the people, to follow the message and expand it and do better with it.
Precisely. And if you read Swami Vivekananda's talk, Christ the Messenger, which is in that PDF that a lot of you received, you'll see that Vivekananda remarks on that Christ did not want to be at the center of a cult of personality. It was his teachings. He was to follow this, and understand this, he said in the Gospel of Thomas. He spoke as a complete Advaitin. I am everything and everywhere. I am not confined to this body. Split a piece of wood, I am there. Turn over a rock, you will find me. That's Logian 77 of Gospel of Thomas.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I suppose a cult of personality becomes a cult when the personality gets so overblown and the teachings are not kept in mind.
Precisely. So it's always a danger. This is one of the reasons that Vivekananda even concerned himself, worried about starting the Ramakrishna order. Because he knew all of these things were potential. So we don't have to play by anybody else's rules. Each of us can make up our own minds and should make up our own minds about what is appropriate for us. And if we lose our heart, like Mirabai lost her heart to Krishna, and there was nothing for her but Krishna, then, what are we going to say? Oh, Mirabai, you're preaching a cult of personality. She would have said, get to know Krishna, then you'll know why I'm so excited. So we have to be very careful about righting and wronging. This is right, this is wrong. No, this is right for me. This is wrong for me. Okay, we've got a few minutes left. Shall I go on reading? Okay. This has often been misunderstood, but I would say that Buddha and his teachings, in their original form, are followed by Vedantists. When Buddha was born, there was a degeneration of the religion of the Vedas. It had become priestcraft. And if you read historically, you'll see what the Swami is pointing to. Nothing could happen without going through the priests. This is what's meant by priestcraft. There was not that urge to realize the truth of God. As a matter of fact, in priestcraft, you're discouraged from that. You're encouraged to seek the things of the path of the fathers. A better life now, a better place in heaven, and a better life when you're reborn. This is what's meant by priestcraft. There was not that urge to realize the truth of God. And so Buddha insisted upon experiencing the truth. Buddha insisted upon experiencing the truth. He even went so far as to suggest throwing away your Vedas if you don't live what they teach. Well, of course he would. What else would he do? Because hypocrisy is the absolute foundational mistake. If you're pious about the Vedas, but you don't practice what they teach, what's the point? You're just posturing. And as Sri Krishna says, you'll get nowhere with that. Buddha even went so far as to suggest throwing away your Vedas if you don't live what they teach. What need have you of scriptures if you cannot struggle to find God? What need of teachings if you forget the ideal? Here's the point. You have to be anxious to attain the truth. You have to desire to free yourself from suffering and ignorance. You may ask, does not everyone seek freedom from suffering? Not always. Let me give you the illustration of the camel. There may be green grass and a thorny plant, and the camel will run for the thorny plant. It will suffer, it will bleed, but nevertheless, it will run for that thorny plant. Now, the Swami isn't making this up. This is true. Why camels do that, who knows? Now consider your minds, which run after objects of pleasure. We know they give us pain and suffering, but we still run after them. Why do even pleasurable things give us pain and suffering? Because the minute we have it, we're afraid of losing it. The minute we've lost it, we want it again. Wanting, 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 always wanting. That restlessness of the mind is a constant mask over the truth. The mask over the truth gives us this sense of separation, naturally, because we are mentally, spiritually, emotionally separated, not really, but underneath it, but in our experience we are. So we have to lose this constant seeking after the objects of pleasure, because they cause us pain and suffering even as we're experiencing them. Oh, I'm afraid I'll lose this. Oh, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. They give us pain and suffering, but we still run after them. Buddha urges us to wake up. One time when he was asked, "Are you a man?" he said, "No." "Are you a god?" "No." "Are you an angel?" "No." "What are you?" He said, "I am Buddha, the awakened one." He never claimed that the attainment was exclusively his. There have been many in the past. There have been many in the past who were Buddhas, and there will be many in the future. In fact, each one of us has to become a Buddha. Just as Swami Swahananda said, each of us must become a Christ. We all have to wake up. We don't have to right now, but the momentum of our being will carry us that way. Why? Because there is something in us that yearns for freedom, yearns for freedom, yearns for true happiness, true freedom. And that means not being imprisoned within the duality. Sri Ramakrishna explained Buddhahood. Sri Ramakrishna explained Buddhahood as having your mind and heart absorbed in Buddha, pure consciousness. Pure consciousness is what I said is behind your ever-changing awareness. It's there. And when your awareness becomes stilled through contemplation, concentration, and meditation, when your awareness becomes still, you find, oh, it was just a transparent covering, a dream covering of your pure consciousness. That is the ideal. It is very difficult to explain what pure consciousness is. We are conscious. I know I am conscious because I see this book. I am conscious of this light, of my surroundings. Now, with that kind of consciousness that Swami's talking about, I term that awareness. I'm aware of this light, of my surroundings. I know only the content of my consciousness. Because of this use of consciousness in two senses, I have substituted the word awareness. So I know only the content of my awareness, but it is the pure light of consciousness that gives light to everything I am using. It is the pure light of consciousness that gives light to everything. I am using that light. You are using that light of God for any experience, in good or bad. But the light remains unknown. Now we become freed from all suffering and misery. Now we become freed from all suffering and misery. Nirvana means extinction of suffering, when we are awakened to that pure consciousness. When we have stilled the ever-changing awareness, we see it is just a transparent mask, a transparent covering over consciousness. And when I say we see that, and actually that's a misuse of the word see, because see is a dualistic word, we realize that. It's beyond duality. Buddha defines the state of nirvana as deliverance from time. There is deliverance from time. When there is no time, there can be no thought. There can be no concept. Buddha defines the state of nirvana as deliverance from time. There's nothing but Brahman, but the mind is limited by time, space, and causation, by relativity. When we see Brahman percolating through time, space, and causation, we see the appearance of the universe. That's what I mean by seeing the mask. We see that it is just that light of consciousness reflecting on all that this action and experience suit is, that makes us think we are a separate being, separate from that consciousness. When we see Brahman percolating through time, space, and causation, we see the appearance of the universe. So when Buddha points out that nirvana is deliverance from time, that means the transcending of Maya. Maya is the duality and all of its aspects. To rise above time is immortality. To be no longer mortal, to be no longer bound by coming and going, birth, death, so on. To rise above time is immortality. And Buddha's words are that nirvana is eternal peace, the peace of realizing the unborn, undying, and changeless reality. The practical spiritual solution to life's suffering, according to all the great religions of the world, is to go beyond the physical and the finite to that reality which is infinite and unchanging. We have just a minute or so left, but I don't want to leave the meeting with any questions or comments. We always do this together, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to do that now. This is a long, long talk by the Swami on the Buddha. And there's many, many, many things covered here. So if there are any questions about the definitions of awareness and consciousness, of reality and unreality, Maya and Nirvana, anything, please bring it up.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Swam.
Swam. During our spiritual practices or contemplation, is there a danger of us just imagining crossing over in that line of experience? Should we guard against that? Can we guard against that? Or is that okay?
Absolutely do not guard against it. It's self-proving, dear. How? The only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. If you cross that line, as you say, your behavior will change. You will change because of what you've realized. So don't worry about this. Just allow yourself to revel in your spiritual practices. Allow yourself to revel in it. Let it be joyous. And if you make a mistake, fine. You'll know it because it doesn't last. I would go to Swami Swahananda with things. And he would say, oh, what a wonderful gift. He said, come again and talk to me about it in 3 months. And then he would say, the only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. If you have an experience and that experience is still potent for you and meaningful 3 months later, one of the things that will happen as a result of that potency and reality is it will have resulted in change in behavior. So do not worry about being excessively emotional or, as you said, crossing that line. No, let it be. And then if you have any doubts about something, talk to Swami Sarvadevananda about it. He's your guru. Yes, you were going to say something else?
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome, of course.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Haima.
I just want to make a comment. In order to change our behavior, we have to change in the thought level, isn't it? Our thought has to change in order for the behavior to change. The thought produces the behavior,
Well,
correct?
it can be thought, it can be emotion,
Sure.
it can be a perception that you've had, a strong perception, which I think is what Swayam was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Some strong perception, vision, whatever. So thoughts, feelings, perceptions, they can all result in an impetus, a pressure to change our behavior. Why? Because we want to sustain what we have gained. We don't want to go back to being that fully asleep again.
That's right. Okay.
It's self-fulfilling. That's what I meant by it's self-fulfilling.
Sure. Thank you.
Very, very well said, Haima. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Anyone else? Okay. So we'll round it off there. I'm so glad we do these things. It's such a joy from this side. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Abir Moiti. O dearly beloved, lead us from thy lesser truth to thy highest truth. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. Light us through and through with thy everlasting shining presence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all suffering and joyous beings everywhere. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. So joyous to be with you. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. Go in Mother's embrace, her sustaining and safe embrace. And see you, I guess, tomorrow, if you choose to join us.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, David.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, brother.
Thank you so much.
Just for those of you who may not know, the topic tomorrow is a karma yogi's way of transformation.
Well, and thank you for the Memorial Day, for the experience and the download that you sent. Thank you.
Oh, well, that was all Swami Sarvadevananda's doing. So
Well,
if you,
powerful.
it was very, isn't it?
Yes,
So
thank
if you feel so moved, just send me an email, which I will forward to Swami Sarvadevananda about that, because it'll just give him lots of joy.
Right.
He now is responsible for so many centers all over this nation, and he gets so many problems, so many stuff to deal with, having been responsible. It's so joyous for him when he receives some sort of appreciation and what we call it in our vernacular, positive feedback.
Well, Memorial Day, it was a nice way to do Memorial Day. Thank you.
It was, wasn't it? It was indeed. Yes. All right, joyous ones. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. I'll end it there.